rock soldiers, listen up. This is J.W. Street of Hellraiser, and we're locked and loaded right here on D.T.M. Wicked Radio.
Let me just say, demonology has nothing to do with the paranormal. Demonology is theological. And so I always really want to stress that to people. So a demonologist it's not a secular term, like a doctor, lawyer, teacher, judge, etc. It is a theological term. And so when someone is a demonologist, they are stating by that very statement that they have a very strong passion for prayer. They've dedicated their life to the study of theology and demonology. So this is a person that should be pious, that should be faithful, that should devote their entire lives to it. It's not something you choose because you think it's fun to do in the paranormal. So a demonologist is laity, and that is and I created a definition that really makes sense to me. It's one who has primary research in the field of demonology, and primary research is people who are actually in the field. Boots on the ground, not someone who has read a book about demonology. There are far too many people who have read books on demonology, and now they're claiming themselves to be demonologists. They're not. A demonologist is one who has had real cases of demonology cases, and there's very, very few far between. There's a lot of people who think that they have participated in demonology cases, demonic cases, but they haven't. And so that's real important to know. Primary research and secondary research are two different things. Secondary research is when you read a book. Primary research is when you have read resources and you're actually in the field, and you have a calling by God to do this ministry. Now that's laity. An exorcist is someone who is validly trained and validly ordained in the rite of exorcism, and who has been given permission by his or her bishop to perform this ritual. So an exorcist is someone who is truly validly ordained and trained to perform this rite. And there are very, very few in the paranormal field who are valid. So a lot of people who claim to be exorcists, but they have no valid orders.
Yeah, that's scary because, for one, messing with demons of any kind and having to have an exorcist is not fun, for one, and it's not something that you want to act like you know what you're doing. This is not a game, and I keep trying to tell people that, let's just go on an investigation, and, I had a family member say they wanted to go actually get drunk and go on an investigation, and I said, no, you don't. I go, you're messing with spirits. You're messing with things that you don't understand as it is. And I go, you do not go in there like that and then start messing with spirits. And these things may not come off, in a shower. Like, you could go get dirty mudding, but when you go out and you start messing with spirits, they might attach to you. You don't know. And I said, so this is not a game, people. It's definitely not. And if you don't know what you're doing, especially when it comes to a nasty entity, whether it be just a nasty entity or demonic, don't play with stuff you don't understand. Call someone who is ordained, like Bishop Long is, if you need something to that, of that, I guess, extent. But do you have the demonic cases? I mean, is it prevalent, or is it a lot of people just claiming it to be demonic?
Anybody who says that demonic entities or demonic cases are rampant have no idea what they're talking about. They're not trained. They have no idea what they're speaking of. They're just plain and simple. I have done this now for 15 years. We get hundreds of cases per week, hundreds. And I can tell you that I performed 27 exorcisms on people who are validly possessed over 15 years. That is how rare it is. And my gosh, I kind of slowed down a bit because I was killing myself. I mean, I was putting 80 hours a week into this. And so I'm telling you that someone who puts that many hours into it for 15 years and 27 real valid exorcisms, well, that's a big difference. Because, see, people don't know the difference between a deliverance and an exorcism. And, again, that's because they're not trained. And they just know. See, that bothers me a lot because people say, well, I'm a Christian, therefore I can perform an exorcism. No, you can't. You cannot. So I love flying, so that means I can get in a cockpit of a 747 and fly without learning.
Right.
It drives me crazy how people just assume, well, just because they're a Christian, they can automatically perform the solemn rite and cast out demons. You know what? They're going to kill somebody. And people actually have been killed during it, and people have been held on manslaughter charges because of it.
See, that's where if there's something like, okay, we are an investigative team, okay, we have a few psychics and we have a sensitive and all this on our team, okay, that's great, we have equipment. But when it comes to something that we can't deal with, that we are not certified or whatever, trained like you are to deal with it, we will call in the truth. We are not going to try and act like we know what we're doing when we don't, period. And there's a lot of people out there that do that, and it drives me crazy because guess who goes and cleans all this mess up is you guys and us. And then we're like calling in the right people when we go clean up the mess because, I mean, I've had teams that go to these places and get scared and leave the client just standing there, not knowing, not saying we'll find another team, nothing, just stuck. And, you know, they do this stuff when they go in there and they tell these poor people that everything in their dog is, oh God, it's demonic. It's demonic. No, it's not always demonic. Sometimes it's a Native American spirit that may be mad. You know, it may be a spirit just letting you know something. It doesn't, maybe they were nasty in life. They're going to be kind of cranky in death. So it's not that it's demonic, but everyone always claims they go straight for that. And when you tell a client that, that's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, that does nothing but spread pandemonium and ignorance, you know?
And it is upsetting because all you've done is just scare the people. And the thing is here's what's bothering me is you got people who are not trained in demonology. And you know what? When they go to bed at night, they know damn well. They know they're not trained. They know. But yet they're going into these people's homes and they're scaring these people. And they're trying to get a name for themselves by using the demonology field in the paranormal community. They're going to knock it off. I mean, it's becoming a major problem. I spoke to a person the other day, and he claims to be a demonologist. Of course, he has 30 years experience, but he's 40 years old. And I go figure. So I read his website, and he's 40 years old, and he claims he has 30 years experience. Okay. So anyway, I talked to him about some demonology, just basic things on demonology that anybody who has any training would know. He had no idea, no clue what I was talking about. And I thought, okay, well, let's talk then about, the solemn rite and the minor rite. He had no idea. He had no idea what the difference was between that. And then I said, well, what about God? I mean, can we just at least acknowledge the fact that you believe in God? And his exact words were, well, I believe in something. I just don't know what.
Oh, boy.
And I said, well, and you're a demonologist.
Wow.
It's not a smorgasbord. It's not a buffet. When you're a demonologist is one who acknowledges the fact that there are angels, that there are demons, that the angels were created by God and freely chose to fall because we are created in God's image. To say that you believe in something, you just don't know what it is, then you're not a demonologist. You're an agnostic.
There you go. People get that all kinds of confused, you know, and you know, when you hear exorcist, you think of the movie. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think of, you know, heads spinning around in circles and all that stuff. You know, I think of Linda Blair. You know, that stuff is scary. And then, you know, you go to the paranormal state, I Am 6. You were involved in that case. Is that correct? Or was that another clergy that did that?
No.
The I Am 6 with Chip. That was Rob, wasn't it?
No, that was my friend, Andrew Calder.
Okay. That right there scared me. And it wasn't even near like the Linda Blair Hollywood version of an exorcist. I mean, do people really like talk in a scary growl voice, and do they say foul things? I mean, what exactly happens when? I mean, is it different depending on how bad the possession is, or what demon has them, you know, in their hold? I mean, how does this work?
From what I understand, that was actually a deliverance and attachment. So I've spoken to the other priest who performed the deliverance on her. And so I spoke to him at length on that particular case. So I understand that it was an attachment and not so much in possession. Because what I saw is not typically what I would see during the possession. Actually, what I saw is far worse. And so I didn't see, what I have witnessed is people speaking in multiple pitches at the same time. So you could have 8 pitches screaming from the individual, whereas Tibetan monks, the most that they can do are 3. And they train their voices, you know, to do that all their lives. And so I've, you know, we're talking about multiple screams, multiple pitches at the same time. Or if I began to, you know, say the Our Father in Aramaic, so I'll pray, Abum the Mashmaya Makara Shavuk. And then the demonic will begin to speak the Our Father backwards in Aramaic as a form of mockery. And so, or mimic the voice of a deceased loved one. This has happened. So it can get quite intense. The proportion of the body is often, I mean, it happens the majority of times. It's just an unnatural proportion of the body and the muscles.
Wow. Yeah, that part of it always freaks me out when I see somebody like in movies, you know, and they have their body is all jacked up and things like that. I'm like, oh my God, does that really happen? And how horrible for that person that they, you know, their body is being used in that manner. And the hell that they must have to go actually through before you guys can, you know, help them out. And it takes like an act of Congress almost to get an actual exorcism set up, does it not? Is it still that way, or is it kind of lightened up a tad?
Well, in the paranormal community, no, because you have people who have no idea what they're doing, and they're running around performing exorcisms on people, and they have no business doing that. See, the thing, here's the problem when you're talking about exorcisms. When you're talking about exorcism, the individual could have a psychological disorder. So, for example, if the person has dissociative personality disorder or multiple personality, and you perform an exorcism on them, you create another personality. Or if they have paranoid schizophrenia, and you could put them in a paranoid state where they can commit suicide. So, unfortunately, these people are running around, and they're performing these exorcisms on individuals without having a psychological evaluation performed on them by a licensed psychiatrist. That's number one. And it happens a lot. And so, and furthermore, you have these people running around, going to people's homes, saying that they're performing an exorcism on these individuals, and yet they have nobody there who is trained medically. Nobody. So that's a very dumb thing to do, because the person could easily have a heart attack, could have a stroke. There's many things. So you have to have someone who's medically trained to monitor the vitals, and they don't do this. And so that's very troubling to me. And again, it's because, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but quite honestly, I'll just be very blunt, the evangelical community, they don't know the difference between a possession and an attachment, a deliverance. So they're two different things, two completely different things. And so I think what's happening is you see a lot of preachers performing these, what they call exorcism, and they're not. They're deliverances. But yet, you see on TV these pastors